People think a safe house sounds a certain way. Quiet, calm, predictable. That night taught me that a normal house can sound exactly the same right before everything breaks apart. I went to my boyfriend's place late, close to midnight, after a long day where nothing interesting had happened. We were tired in that dull way that makes you want noise in the background, but no real conversation. His house felt familiar, comfortable, and small enough to feel controlled, like nothing could hide inside it without being noticed. We sat on the couch with the lights off, the TV filling the room with lazy sounds we weren't really paying attention to. We weren't drunk, we weren't distracted, and nothing felt off. That detail matters because people always assume you miss warning signs. That night, there weren't any clear ones. At some point, the movie kept playing while we stopped watching. The house settled into that late-night stillness where every small sound feels louder, but not threatening yet. That was the last moment where everything felt normal. The first noise came from the backyard, and it wasn't loud enough to scare me right away. It sounded like something brushing against wood, brief and careless, the kind of noise you could explain away without much effort. My boyfriend muted the TV and looked at me, waiting to see my reaction before choosing his own. He got up slowly, not acting brave, just cautious, and grabbed his phone to use the flashlight. I stayed on the couch, listening to his steps as he crossed the room and opened the back door. Cold air came in, and for a second, the house felt exposed in a way I couldn't explain. He scanned the yard, checking the fence and the corners, moving the light back and forth until he seemed satisfied. There was nothing there, no movement, no shape, no sound. He locked the door carefully and pulled the blind all the way down before coming back. We tried to joke it off, tried to force the night back into its place. And the movie started again. I leaned back against the couch, telling myself that fear didn't belong there, even though my attention stayed fixed on the hallway. The second noise didn't come from outside. It came from inside the house, deeper, closer, from one of the bedrooms we weren't using. This time, my body reacted before my brain did. My chest tightened, and I sat up straight, listening harder than I wanted to. The sound wasn't clear enough to name, but it didn't belong there, and that alone was enough to make my skin crawl. My boyfriend stood up again, slower now, and it didn't joke this time. He walked down the hallway, checking each room with more care, opening doors fully, leaning inside, and looking under the bed like he expected something to be there. I stayed where I was, staring down the dark hallway, counting his steps. He came back and said he didn't see anything, but his voice didn't sound confident. He sat beside me, closer than before, and turned the volume down instead of muting it completely, like he didn't want silence to take over. There was a long pause, long enough to feel wrong, where nothing happened and no one moved. The hallway light stayed on, and the bedroom door behind him remained open, empty and quiet in a way that made my stomach tighten. The man wearing a clown mask rushed out of the bedroom without making a sound. He grabbed my boyfriend from behind and slammed him into the wall hard enough to shake the frame. The impact was violent and sudden, and the sound it made was deep and heavy like furniture breaking. My boyfriend screamed as the intruder wrapped his arms around his chest and dragged him backward into the bedroom. My boyfriend tried to fight, scraping his shoes against the floor and reaching for the doorframe, but the intruder was stronger and pulled him inside with terrifying ease. The door slammed shut, turning off the light and leaving the hallway dark. I didn't scream. I didn't freeze. I ran. I ran into the kitchen, forcing myself to think through the panic, and grabbed the largest knife I could find from the counter. My grip wasn't steady, and I had to stop myself from dropping it as the sounds from the bedroom grew louder and more desperate. Before I could decide what to do, the bedroom door cracked open, and my boyfriend's hand slid out onto the hallway floor, shaking and covered in blood. His fingers clawed at the ground as he screamed my name and told me to get out while I still could. I turned toward the front door, but my foot caught the edge of the rug and sent me crashing down. The knife flew from my hand and skidded across the floor out of reach. I barely had time to push myself up before something grabbed my ankles and dragged me backward with force. The clown mask filled my vision as the intruder pulled me across the floor. I kicked, twisted, and screamed, landing a hard blow against his chest that made him loosen his grip for just a second. That second was enough for me to roll away, scramble to my feet, and run down the hallway. I threw myself into the bathroom and slammed the door shut, locking it with shaking hands and pressing my body against it. The house went quiet for a moment, and that silence felt heavier than the noise that came before it. I pulled out my phone and called 911, whispering the address and telling them someone was inside the house, that my boyfriend was hurt, and that I was locked in the bathroom with no way out. My voice shook as I spoke, and I could barely hear the operator over my own breathing. While I was on the phone, my boyfriend started screaming again, louder and closer than before. He begged for help, called my name over and over, and his voice cracked in a way that made it clear he was losing strength. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep myself from making noise as tears ran down my face. Then something slammed into the bathroom door with enough force to make it bend inward. The handle rattled violently as heavy blows followed one after another, each hit making the door shake harder. I screamed into the phone that the door wasn't going to hold and that they needed to hurry because there wasn't much time left. The banging sound continued, mixed with scraping sounds against the door, and I pushed my shoulder into it, trying to keep it closed while my legs slid across the floor. I could hear my boyfriend crying now, his voice breaking as he begged for someone to open the door and help him. Suddenly, everything stopped. No banging, no scraping, no screaming. Just silence so complete that it made my ears ring. I stayed there holding my breath, terrified that any sound from me would bring the intruder back. The operator told me police were close. A few minutes later, I heard sirens outside, distant at first and then louder, and relief hit me so hard that I started sobbing without control. The fear of being trapped finally broke me. I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway, calling my boyfriend's name as I moved forward, desperate to see him alive. He was lying directly behind the bathroom door, his body blocking the space where I had been hiding. His eyes were open, staring past me, and his hands were raw and bloody from pounding on the door. In that moment, I understood everything. He hadn't been trying to break in. He had been trying to get away. If I had opened the door when he begged, he would have survived. I dropped to my knees beside him and touched his shoulder, knowing before I did it that he wouldn't respond. When I leaned closer, I saw his mouth clearly. His tongue was gone. I screamed, the sound tearing out of me as the front door burst open and police flooded the house with guns raised and voices shouting. They searched every room, every corner, the yard, and the street outside. They never found the man in the clown mask. The police told me intruders like that sometimes disappear without a trace. They told me I followed procedure by staying hidden and calling for help. They told me there was nothing I could have done differently. I don't believe them. I still hear the pounding of the door when everything is quiet. I still hear him calling my name, begging me to open it. And I know that safety doesn't always mean survival. In 2020, a man wearing a clown mask forced his way into a home in Detroit, USA, attacked a woman with a weapon, and fired shots inside the house before fleeing with the victim's cash. Police described him as wearing a clown mask and a dark hoodie, and the victim was hospitalized in stable condition after the attack.
The thing that still bothers me is that nothing looked wrong that day. The house was clean, quiet, and normal. The kind of normal you don't question because you live inside it every day. I was home, my wife was home, and our daughters were safe under the same roof. Or at least, that's what I believed at the time. We lived in a 2-story house with thin walls and wooden floors that creaked when someone walked too fast. Our oldest daughter was 6, our youngest 3, and we had built our entire routine around keeping them safe without making them feel trapped. That balance mattered to us more than anything. Security cameras were part of that routine. They were installed early, mostly to calm our nerves, mostly to check on the kids when they played alone. We had one in the living room, positioned high in the corner, facing the floor where the girls spent most of their time. That afternoon, our oldest daughter was alone in the living room, playing with her dolls. My wife was upstairs folding clothes, and I was in my office wearing headphones, trying to finish work. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing demanded attention. That's why it worked. The changes didn't arrive all at once. They came quietly and spread through our days in ways that felt easy to excuse. Our daughter started lying about small things that didn't matter enough to fight over, but didn't feel like her either. She pushed her sister, took money, and broke objects without showing guilt. We talked to her calmly, sitting at her level, asking questions instead of raising our voices. She listened, nodded, and promised not to do it again. But her eyes felt distant, like she was thinking about something else entirely while we spoke. At night, her questions changed. She asked about blood, about secrets, about who could see her when the lights were off. My wife said kids go through phases, and I wanted to believe her, because the alternative felt too heavy to name. The first camera alert came while I was at work. Living room audio detected. When I opened the feed, I saw my daughter sitting on the floor, her back straight, her toys untouched. She wasn't talking. She was listening. Then, a voice came through the speaker. "Don't be scared. I'm Santa." My chest tightened in a way I didn't understand yet. After hearing that voice, I couldn't sit still anymore. I replayed the footage again and again, listening carefully, trying to find a glitch or a recording error that could explain what I heard. The voice sounded calm, controlled, and close, as if the man was standing right inside our living room. That night, my wife and I watched hours of video together. We didn't speak much. Every time the voice appeared, our daughter reacted the same way, sitting still, answering softly and following instructions without hesitation. There was no fear in her behavior, only attention and trust. Before the next incident, tension settled into the house in a way that didn't fade. We stopped leaving her alone, even for short moments, and we whispered when the girls were asleep, afraid that walls or screens could somehow listen. Sleep became shallow and broken for both of us. The voice returned when she was alone for less than 2 minutes. This time, it asked her to take coins from a drawer and hide them. When she did, the man praised her, speaking slowly and kindly, promising rewards for being helpful and quiet. Later that same day, the instructions changed. He told her that her sister needed to learn a lesson, that crying made Santa sad, and that small punishments helped children grow. Watching the footage, my wife covered her mouth while our daughter hit her sister without anger, without hesitation, as if she were completing a task. By then, fear wasn't abstract anymore. It sat in our conversations, in our movements, and in the way we watched our daughter closely without knowing how to protect her from something we couldn't touch. Every time she glanced at the camera, my stomach tightened. Before the next escalation, the house felt crowded, even when we were alone. Every sound pulled our attention, and every quiet moment felt unsafe. We started sleeping with our bedroom door locked, something we'd never done before. One night, my wife woke up screaming. Our daughter stood next to the bed holding a kitchen knife with both hands, her face blank, her body stiff. She said Santa told her to fix something inside her mother's arms. She looked confused when we shouted. After that night, I stopped pretending we could handle this alone. The fear was constant, sitting under every thought, making every normal moment feel fragile. I unplugged the cameras, but part of me already knew that wouldn't end it. Before he spoke directly to me, I stood alone in the living room staring at the dark lens, trying to control my voice while asking whoever was listening to leave us alone. I didn't expect an answer, but I got one immediately. "I was waiting for you to talk to me." His voice sounded pleased, relaxed, and confident, and he explained how long he had been watching us, how easy it was to gain our daughter's trust, and how much he enjoyed seeing how far he could push her. He described our routine in detail, naming things only someone inside our life could know. The power went out that night, and the silence that followed felt heavy and dangerous. The front door handle moved slowly, testing the lock, and footsteps crossed the living room with no urgency at all. He said he had already asked our daughter to unlock the door earlier, just in case. That night, I didn't wait anymore. In a moment of pure desperation, I lost control. I walked through the house, ripping the cameras off the walls with my bare hands, pulling cables, throwing plastic and metal to the floor without thinking. I just needed them gone. That's when my daughter spoke from the corner of the living room. She said I couldn't take all of them. When I asked what she meant, she lifted one of her toys and showed it to me. It was a little bear that she had been carrying everywhere for weeks. One of its eyes was dark and round, and when I looked closer, I understood why. There was a camera inside it. When I grabbed the toy, it warmed in my hand, and a voice came through the small speaker hidden inside the plastic. He calmly said, "Are you sure you want to remove all the cameras?" He asked what would happen to my daughters if no one was watching them. He said he already knew my routine, the streets we walked, the school they went to every morning, and the places we thought were safe. My mind raced through everything he said, every possibility, every mistake I'd already made. For a moment, I considered leaving the toy where it was, just to keep him talking, just to feel like I knew where he was. Instead, I smashed it against the floor until it broke. That night, I called the police. They never found him. They never found a name, a face, or a location. Eventually, nothing strange happened again. No more voices, no more sounds, and no more signs of interference. We stopped using cameras completely. Maybe it really was just a disturbed man doing this for fun. But we never stopped watching our surroundings. Because even without cameras, the feeling of being watched never fully left us.
I'm your best friend. You can do whatever you want right now. You can mess up your room. You can break your TV. You can do whatever you want.
Who is that?
I'm your best friend. I'm Santa Claus.
The first thing I need to say is that nothing about my building looked dangerous. That's why it worked. 6 floors, old elevator, narrow hallways, weak lighting, and barely any neighbors. The kind of place where people mind their own business and disappear behind their doors. I chose it because it felt invisible, and I needed a place where no one cared. I lived alone, worked long hours, and kept a routine that never changed much. I left in the morning, came back at night, sometimes later than usual. I didn't decorate much. I didn't invite people over. I really didn't talk to neighbors more than basic greetings. I was lonely, but I was comfortable. The first time I saw him, it didn't register as a problem. He was standing near the mailboxes, not checking anything. He was just there. I assumed he was new or visiting someone. Buildings like this don't come with introductions. I said hello because that's what people do when they cross paths in shared spaces. He answered slowly, like the word had to travel a long way before reaching his mouth. His eyes stayed on me longer than needed, but I brushed it off and walked past him, already forgetting his face. After that, I started seeing him again. Not immediately, not dramatically, but often enough to become noticeable. One day in the hallway, another day near the stairs, sometimes close to the elevator, sometimes already inside when the doors opened. There was no clear pattern, and that was what made it uncomfortable. I couldn't predict him. I couldn't connect him to a schedule or a routine. He was just simply there, regardless of the time or day, as if the building itself had placed him where I would pass. Every interaction felt incomplete. When I said hello, he answered with one word or nodded without a sound. He never asked questions, never explained himself. His attention stayed fixed on me in a way that felt focused, not curious. I checked the building notices and the tenant list more than once. Only 2 apartments were occupied on my floor, and I knew both residents. I told myself he must live above or below me, even though something about that explanation never settled properly. That day, the hallway felt wrong from the moment I stepped out of my apartment. The lights flickered silently, and the elevator took longer than usual to arrive. I stood there listening to the mechanical noise, trying to stay patient, holding my keys tighter than necessary. When the doors finally opened, I stepped inside and pressed my floor. Just as the doors began to close, a hand slid between them, forcing them open again. He stepped in without asking, standing close enough that I had to shift my weight to make space. The elevator moved, slow and heavy, stopping at floors where no one entered. The silence became uncomfortable, so I tried to fill it with something normal. "How are you?" "Good." His voice was flat, low, and empty of tone. I nodded, waited a moment, and tried again, forcing casual conversation even though my body was already tense. "Which floor are you on?" "5th." That answer made me look at him directly. The 5th floor only has 2 apartments. I know both people who live there. He stared at the numbers above the door for a second longer than needed. "Sorry. 6th. That correction felt rehearsed, not mistaken. "I thought there weren't any free apartments up there." He didn't answer. The elevator continued upward in silence, the walls too close, the air too still. He reached out and pressed a button. The elevator stopped between floors, the movement cutting off abruptly. The light stayed on, but the sound vanished. My heart started racing, and I pressed myself against the wall without thinking. He turned toward me slowly, his expression calm in a way that didn't match the situation. "I want to tell you something, but you can't tell anyone." I didn't respond. My throat felt tight, and my hands stayed frozen at my sides. "I've been living here for weeks. Not in an apartment. In the building itself." He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if sharing something intimate. "I sleep in hallways, storage rooms, on the roof, wherever I need to." My mind tried to reject what he was saying, but his confidence made it worse. He wasn't asking permission. He wasn't nervous. "You're my favorite neighbor. I see you all the time. When you leave, when you come back. You're very consistent." He leaned closer, his breath near my ear, and his hand reached for mine. He took my fingers slowly, deliberately, and put them in his mouth, sucking them one by one without breaking eye contact. My body refused to move until instinct finally took over, and I slapped him hard across the face. His reaction was immediate and violent. The softness disappeared, replaced by anger that felt controlled. His hand closed around my neck, pressing just enough to make the message clear. His thumb pressed under my jaw, forcing my head back so I had to look at him. "Don't do that again." My feet barely touched the floor, and my chest struggled to pull in air. He leaned close enough that I could see the veins in his eyes, steady and focused. I tried to move, tried to scream, but his grip tightened just enough to keep me quiet. He turned his head slightly and pressed the button, and the elevator started moving again. He didn't let go. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine, his voice calm and steady. "I decide when it moves. I decide when it stops. No one can hear you in here." I tried to push his arm away, but my strength didn't matter. He adjusted his grip, not choking me, just controlling my breathing enough to make every breath feel uncertain. "I see you every day. I know your steps. I know how long you take to unlock your door. I know when you're tired." He released my neck suddenly, but didn't step back. Instead, he traced his fingers along my jaw, down my arm, gripping my wrist again. "If you talk, I'll still be here. If you don't, I'll still be here. That's the part you need to understand." The elevator slowed as it approached another floor. He straightened his clothes, fixed his posture, and stepped away from me as if nothing had happened. Before the doors opened, he leaned in one last time. "You don't get to forget me." When the doors finally opened, he stood beside me like a stranger waiting for a normal stop, calm and quiet, while my body struggled to remember how to move. I called the police immediately. When they arrived, they checked every floor, every room, the roof, and the basement. They found nothing. No signs of someone living there. No belongings. No witnesses. They told me it could have been someone just passing through, someone confused or someone with access to the building. They suggested I stay alert and call if it happened again. For a while, everything felt normal. I didn't see him. I started sleeping better. I told myself it was over, even though I never fully believed it. Then, I saw him again, weeks later, standing at the far end of the hallway, watching me quietly. Now it happens regularly, once a week, sometimes more. Footsteps outside my door, slow and deliberate, stopping right in front of it. Shadows under the door that don't move. Sometimes I look through the peephole and see an eye already staring back at me, close enough that it fills the view. He never knocks, never speaks. He just waits. I've changed my routine, added locks, installed cameras, but it doesn't stop him from knowing when I leave and when I return. He still lives in the building, and I still live here too. A man identified as Benjamin Bakur, 40, was found living clandestinely in the crawl space of a condominium complex near Happy Valley in Oregon. He furnished the space with a bed, television, video game console, and electricity without anyone's permission, and he lived there undetected for weeks before being discovered by authorities.